I have learned so much in my life from the activities I've been a part of. In Interact Club, we provide opportunities for students to participate in community service. My role as president requires me to plan meetings and discussions, plan events, and participate in community service. In yearbook class, I learned how to lead a team, cooperate with those who have differing opinions, photography, graphic design, and meet deadlines. I've also been a part of robotics, student council, NHS, even published a poem in my school's magazine. These experiences have all been wonderful parts of my life, but the place where I've made the most impact and what I am most proud of is Hope Squad. Hope Squad is a peer-to-peer suicide prevention program at my school, and this year I got the opportunity to co-lead our kickoff meeting at the beginning of the school year. The two of us decided to share our stories, the reasons we joined, and why the program is so important to us. After this speech, we spoke at a conference in Oakland, Michigan with an audience of 400 school educators and administrators with the goal that they would adopt a Hope Squad in their schools. The week after, we presented in front of about 30 school officials in my area. We've shared these stories a handful of times now, and I feel that we've made a real impact in our community. Although I may come off as a type A academic, I consider myself to be very open to others. My goal in life is to help people, and my empathy aids me in that. Studies have suggested that those who possess the character trait of empathy and want to help others are more likely to receive the opportunity to help someone. Simply put, we attract what we put out. Those who want to help people will be presented with opportunities to help. In 9th grade, I made a friend that would change my life forever. We started talking and soon became best friends. Not long after, we started opening up to each other about our feelings. We got to a point when I realized that they had some very dark thoughts about themselves. I didn't quite realize at the time, but they were thoughts of suicide. Nobody talked to me about how to handle this. As their best friend, I tried to be there for them. Most nights, I'd stay up until 2 or 3 a.m. helping them. I'd listen, offer solutions and empathy, and assure them that they are wanted in this world. I made a promise to help them. It took a lot of energy, but I continued to help. I kept my promise. I was so worn out after staying up night after night to help, so one night I fell asleep before we could talk. Now this doesn't sound like a huge deal, except it was, because I felt they relied on me. I felt responsible for their life. I thought, if I didn't help, who would? If I couldn't be there, were they going to be okay? The only way I knew to keep them safe was to keep helping. I fell asleep that night. They said their goodbyes. The next morning, I wake up and try to gather myself and the memories of just before I fell asleep. Knowing what could be true, I grabbed my phone and saw the notification that they had texted me. My stomach immediately twisted itself into a knot as I opened the conversation. It left off on unread messages, and it took a full 60 minutes to read them all. As I read each message, I read it over a few times thoroughly, trying to pace my breath with each one to stay calm. There was a pattern I noticed as they described every thought to me. They cycled through contemplation if this was really what they wanted, then deciding, saying goodbye, and not going through with it. This went on for hours, I could see from the timestamps. Then I read the final message. They said goodbye, in case it was. Looking back, I was absolutely in a state where I couldn't think straight and could not logically think of the next right step. I suddenly remembered that my dad invited me to go fishing that particular morning, and I ran to the window only to see that he was leaving. I thought if I went on the lake with him, I would calm down enough to know what to do next, and also I just really wanted to be with someone. I put on my life jacket and ran to grab my shoes as I struggled to clip the jacket. I swung open the door and ran down to the dock where he had just left. I called to him, but I couldn't say anything beyond "Dad." I shouted to him 2 or 3 times by the time he circled back to pick me up. He could tell something was wrong, so he got out of the boat and came up to me. I hugged him, started crying, and we walked back into the house as I told him what was wrong. We woke up my mom, called the police, and a few hours later learned that my friend was still alive. Years passed as I continued to be the supportive friend, and they appeared to be happier and really be thriving, until a few months ago. They considered, once again, the idea of taking their own life, but thankfully, they decided against it. Looking back, I realized I am not a therapist, no matter how much I wish I was, and this time they finally got the professional help they needed. This experience has opened my eyes to the fact that I cannot be the only one in this situation, that there must be other helpers out there going through the same things I did who don't know what to do, who felt as powerless and helpless as I did. Sharing this story is important because it's important to be vulnerable. I'm not perfect, but I'm learning to carry this weight and view it as a learning experience so I can pass on what I've learned to others. That's why I'm here tonight. This, as you would imagine, has significantly impacted my life and shifted the way I think about pretty much everything. I definitely used to be a type A personality who was fixated on grades in school, thinking those things should come first priority always. I've learned to put more time into caring for myself and building strong relationships. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm still a bit of an academic, slightly grade-obsessed person, but I place more importance on the people I care about. Not only has my mindset changed, but through this situation, I've now had years of experience carrying the weight of helping someone struggling with mental health, whether it be the person mentioned in my story or other people close to me. Lesson number 1, probably the hardest for me to learn, was the fact that I cannot overly invest my emotions. There are several nights that I put everything I have into someone only to end up more scared for their safety than I was before and feel uneasy until I know that they're safe. It's hard to stop thinking about every possibility when you exert so much energy. I'm learning to take a step back, close my eyes, and take a deep breath. This helps me stay calm and evaluate a situation. The outcome will be better for both the ones giving and receiving the help and allows me to think clearly about what to do. Such as the instance in my story, I did not have the mental space to evaluate the right course of action. Instead, I wanted to go fishing with my dad because it was the only thought I had that wasn't about my friend. Allowing yourself the emotional distance is critical. Lesson number 2 is about handling negative emotions that come up in the process of helping someone. I've learned there's a line to draw between getting mental space and emotions going numb. I read a book about therapy that dedicated an entire chapter to burnout. I learned this term in my psychology textbook called emotional insulation, where people unconsciously try to prevent themselves from experiencing emotion. I realized this is why I experience burnout so easily when helping others. There are times where I felt angry that I have to keep helping consistently and at very inconvenient times. It made me feel like I couldn't relax after a long day. I'd feel so drained that I don't have the capacity to help, but cannot say no because I fear if I turn them away one night, they may not ask me for help again. This is best described as compassion fatigue, a term I learned when reading a research paper from Hope Squad. Another issue I really struggle with is this idea I've coined safety versus guilt. In the event that I'm worrying about a friend, I'm faced with a choice. I can either tell someone who can keep them safe and experience guilt about it, or not tell and be fearful, wondering if I should have told. In truth, I've done both of these. I find it hard to tell someone I'm worried about a friend without feeling like I've betrayed their trust and their privacy. Everyone has a right to their privacy, but sometimes I worry to what extent I should honor this. I feel better after telling someone, and there are only a few times this didn't go well. I've made the mistake of telling no one before, and it almost cost me everything. So in the long run, I have to believe this is the right thing to do. Through this, there are a few times I've caught myself losing my own sense of identity. I become so engulfed in helping the feelings and thought processes of others that I forget to take care of myself, to the point where I forget about things that are important to me. Preserving my identity is important because without taking care of myself, I operate as a helper and not as a person. And this is something I'm willing to do when the life of someone could hang in the balance. A piece of information I wish I knew when starting to support others with mental health is the importance of a support system, both for yourself and for the one that you're helping. First, we'll talk about a support system for the one struggling. The importance of this is something I've recognized way too recently, and the existence of one has helped me tremendously. As I mentioned earlier, there are times I need to distance myself and set that boundary without being too distant and not doing anything about it. Having a support system for someone struggling means that when I'm fearing for their safety, I don't carry the weight of responsibility alone. This ensures that someone else knows that one is in crisis, can actively help them, and provides the time to rest emotionally. This is what I typically have done when I know my friends are struggling. To start a support network for someone struggling, it's important to first be sure to openly communicate with them. This person needs to be aware of the people who care most about them, so they know if I worry, I'll contact someone in this trusted circle. Forming good communication and building trust are the keys to this. In addition to the loved one getting support, you need your own support too. One way to do this is to firmly, but nicely, set clear boundaries for yourself. This can look like turning off your phone at 9 p.m., blocking out time just for you, or turning to a team member when you need help. Another thing I do is debrief with my supports. Oftentimes, my greatest supporters are the same friends I help, and they end up helping me right back, usually being the greatest help of all because they understand what I'm feeling. In the event that I need to debrief about a situation with someone I'm helping, I often turn to family or just another friend. I find it helpful to explain everything, even if I can't use names or details, and getting a second opinion really helps me. Sometimes all I need is a listening ear. If a few things compound on top of helping someone, a lot of times I can just tell my parents and they can keep me calm and think about the right step with an outside perspective. Having this outside perspective is really nice when deciding what step to take next. I can now look back on my experience from 9th grade, and I think it's fair to say that I would have handled things differently with the wisdom I now carry. I want to say that I could put my emotions in the back of my mind and bring to focus my logic. I think I would have gotten help when they had a bad night and tried to form a support system earlier in the process. Learning these lessons from my past experiences has gotten me to where I am now. In the beginning, I thought that I had to support the full weight of someone's life. I can now see that the individual needs to first decide that they are going to help themselves, even if it's with the help of a friend. Hope is a very hard thing to have sometimes when this seems to be an ongoing battle. The threat of danger for another looms and can often feel more depressing than hopeful. One thing I've done to stay hopeful is email the founder of Hope Squad for resources for those struggling to stay hopeful in times of crisis. A good friend once told me, "It's a long process, but it's going to get better." I choose to look at these instances with a perspective of curiosity. It took me a long time to shift my view from thinking about my experience as a scarring one to an experience I can draw truths from. Now I try, and I stress try, to see my experiences as building blocks that help me build resilience. I want to grow from this experience. I want to grow stronger and wiser and learn everything that I can and use these moments as tools to look back on later in life. Here's a quote I found particularly inspiring from Gandhi. "As human beings, our greatness lies not so much in being able to remake the world as in being able to remake ourselves." In my philosophy class, I learned this term called eudaimonia. Eudaimonia is the idea that we can strive to improve ourselves and become better people. It is an ideology that holds the concept that we can reach a state of happiness where we feel perfect the way we are, happy the way we are, and still strive to become better people. From this talk, I hope all of you derive 5 things. It is important that you learn to recognize your own emotions as you help others. That you learn to set boundaries and take care of yourself. That in the process, you gain insight into your own identity. That building a support system for someone struggling is an important step in their journey. And lastly, knowing how to have hope when things seem hopeless. Thank you.